The demands for tribute, or to face enslavement and destruction from the envoy of the Galactic Zanari Empire, were answered by the defiant humans sending a fleet of nuclear-armed ships to destroy the alien tyrant's forward outpost in a daring preemptive strike. When Ambassador Tharos of the sprawling Zanari Empire transmitted his arrogant demands to the remote planet called Earth, he expected the primitive species to cower in fear and readily submit to their new overlords. But the humans were made of far sterner stuff. The imposing extraterrestrial and his dire ultimatum sent shockwaves through the global community. The UN convened an emergency session, with nations large and small uniting against the unprecedented threat from the stars. The no-nonsense ex-Marine now serving as UN Secretary General, an iron-willed man named Charles Shaw, stood before the assembly and called for bold action. Humanity would not bend the knee, toil as slaves, or tithe their resources and freedoms to distant alien rulers. They would fight. Shaw convinced the world's leaders to defy the outrageous Zanari demands and demonstrate the strength and tenacity of the human spirit. Under Shaw's directive, the best and brightest of Earth's combined space forces scrambled to retrofit a fleet of ships with the most potent weapons in the human arsenal, nuclear missiles. As the Zanari delegation waited impatiently for a response, they were caught completely off guard when the human vessels jumped into the system housing their forward base. Before the Zanari ships could react, the human craft launched a massive salvo of atomic warheads, pummeling the outpost in a series of blinding detonations that shattered its structures and turned its surface into a radiation-blasted hellscape. The attack sent shockwaves through the galaxy as news spread of the upstart humans who dared to challenge the Empire's might. For centuries, the Zanari had ruled countless star systems with an iron fist, demanding tribute and mercilessly crushing any sign of resistance. Many subjugated races who had long suffered under the yoke of oppression felt a spark of hope at word of Earth's act of defiance. Whispers spread of a potential uprising, of the human world serving as a rallying cry for rebellion against the Zanari. Aboard his gargantuan command ship, an enraged Ambassador Tharos watched the footage of the smoldering wreckage that had once been a proud imperial outpost. The Emperor himself sent a transmission expressing his fury, but giving Tharos free rein to punish the insolent Terrans. Tharos vowed to make a gruesome example of Earth, razing its great cities to ash and enslaving its entire population as a warning to any others who would dare to oppose Zanari rule. As the Empire recalled its far-flung armadas to mount an overwhelming reprisal against Earth, Secretary General Shaw rallied humanity's forces to fortify the planet's defenses and prepare for the fight of their lives. He worked tirelessly to unite rival nations and factions against their common enemy, knowing that only together could mankind hope to resist the Zanari onslaught. Fleets of human ships, now equipped with expanded arsenals of nuclear ordnance, stood ready to face the Zanari war machine head-on, as did the men and women of Earth's armies, ready to fight to the last to defend their homeworld. Across the globe, humanity steeled itself for an all-out interstellar war, the first in its history, knowing that its very survival as a free species hung in the balance. The people of Earth stood determined not to let their world fall, even against the might of a star-spanning empire. When the Zanari arrived, they would face not tribute, but a hail of atomic fire, along with the indomitable human spirit that had brought them to the stars. The fate of the planet, and perhaps even the galaxy itself, would soon be decided. In the days following humanity's bold strike against the Zanari outpost, Charles Shaw moved quickly to prepare Earth for the inevitable reprisal. He convened an emergency summit of world leaders and top military brass to coordinate a planet-wide defense effort. "We bought ourselves some time with that attack, but make no mistake, the Zanari will come at us with everything they've got," Shaw said, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "We need to be ready." Under Shaw's directive, construction crews worked around the clock to erect a network of orbital defense platforms overflowing with railguns and missile batteries. Squadrons of fighter craft and destroyers took up defensive positions, ready to intercept any incoming threat. On the ground, armies mobilized as cities from Beijing to New York braced for possible invasion. Behind the scenes, Shaw oversaw a desperate effort to even the odds. In an underground bunker, a team of Earth's brightest scientists and engineers pored over fragments of Zanari technology recovered from the destroyed outpost. They worked feverishly to reverse engineer the aliens' advanced propulsion, energy weapons, and shielding systems. Dr. Elena Novak, a brilliant physicist, stared at a glowing Zanari power cell, her brow furrowed in concentration. "If we can figure out how they generate so much energy in such a small package," she muttered, "it could be a game changer." As the threat of invasion loomed, Shaw received a shocking piece of intel. A faction of Zanari military leaders opposed the war, viewing it as a foolhardy diversion from more pressing security concerns. Sensing an opportunity, Shaw dispatched a covert diplomatic team, backed by elite special forces, to reach out to the dissident Zanari. "If we can get them to turn on Theros, it might buy us the time we need," Shaw said to his inner circle. "But we have to tread carefully. If Theros gets wind of this, he'll crush the dissidents and attack even sooner." Aboard his flagship, Theros stood on the bridge, seething with rage as he watched a holographic display of his assembled war fleet. Thousands of Zanari ships, from gargantuan battlecruisers to nimble fighters, formed up in preparation for the assault on Earth. Suddenly, an aide rushed in and whispered urgently in Theros' ear. The Zanari leader's eyes narrowed. "Traitors!" he spat. "Deal with them, now!" As the conspirators were dragged away for execution, Theros turned to his expectant subordinates. "The invasion begins now," he growled. "Let's teach these upstart humans the price of defiance." Theros' armada surged forward, emerging from warp speed at the edge of Earth's solar system. Immediately, they were met by a barrage of fire from the human defense platforms and warships. The sky lit up with the flashes of railgun rounds and the glowing trails of missiles. Zanari dropships punched through the orbital defenses, angling toward the planet's surface. As they entered the atmosphere, anti-aircraft batteries and fighter squadrons rose to meet them. Dogfights erupted over the skies of Earth's cities as human pilots clashed with Zanari craft in desperate battle. On the streets below, citizens-turned soldiers took up arms to defend their homes. They barricaded intersections and fortified buildings, engaging in brutal urban combat against Zanari shock troops. The cacophony of energy weapons and the cries of the wounded filled the air. From his command bunker, Shaw watched the tactical displays with mounting dread. The Zanari were making ground, despite heavy losses. It was only a matter of time before Earth's defenders were overwhelmed. They needed a miracle. Shaw's thoughts turned to the top-secret project he had initiated, the one he had bet everything on. It was humanity's last hope, a desperate gamble that could either turn the tide or seal their fate. He could only pray it would be ready in time. The ESS Indomitable rocketed towards the Zanari command ship, its hull gleaming in the harsh light of distant stars. On the bridge, Captain Reeves gripped the arms of his chair, his fist clenched with tension. "Initiate final attack sequence," Reeves barked. "Divert all power to the EMP weapon." The ship hummed with energy as the experimental weapon drew power from the fusion reactors. Warning lights flashed across control panels, indicating the strain on the ship's systems. Suddenly, the comms crackled to life. "Sir, we're detecting a massive energy buildup from the Zanari fleet. They're preparing to fire." Reeves leaned forward, his heart made. "Launch all fighters and bombers. Tell them to engage the enemy and draw their fire." A swarm of small craft erupted from the Indomitable's hangar bays, streaking towards the Zanari ships. The space between the two fleets lit up with weapons fire as the human fighters clashed with alien vessels in a desperate dogfight. "Now's our chance," Reeves said. "Helm, take us in. Weapons, prepare to fire the EMP on my mark." The Indomitable surged forward, weaving through the chaotic melee of smaller ships. Zanari cruisers loomed ahead, their weapons turning to track the human vessel. "Fire!" A blinding pulse of energy erupted from the Indomitable, washing over the Zanari command ship and nearby vessels. For a moment, everything went silent. Then, one by one, the alien ships began to go dark, their weapons and engines failing. But the victory was short-lived. The rest of the Zanari armada opened fire, pummeling the Indomitable with a relentless barrage. "Shields failing!" an officer shouted over the din of claxons and creaking metal. "Hull breaches on decks 3 through 7. "Divert all remaining power to shields," Reeves ordered. "Brace for impact." The ship shuddered under the assault, its hull buckling from the force of the attacks. Sparks flew from damaged consoles as the crew fought to keep their vessel intact. On Earth, Secretary General Shaw received the news of the Indomitable's strike with mixed emotions. "They did it," he muttered. "But at what cost?" An aide approached, her face grim. "Sir, the Indomitable is crippled and adrift. The Zanari will finish them off soon." Shaw's eyes narrowed. "Not if we can help it. Scramble our fastest ships for a rescue mission. We're not leaving them out there." Aboard the stricken Indomitable, Captain Reeves and his crew battled to save their ship. Fires raged through damaged compartments as they struggled to restore power to critical systems. "Life support is failing," reported the chief engineer, his face streaked with soot. "We can't take much more of this." Reeves nodded grimly. "Prepare to abandon ship. If help doesn't arrive soon, we'll have no choice." Meanwhile, aboard an auxiliary command vessel, Theros seethed with rage. "Target that human ship," he snarled. "I want it destroyed or captured. Launch boarding parties and missiles. We'll take their precious weapon for ourselves." A desperate race began as Earth's rescue ships sped towards the Indomitable. They clashed with Zanari boarders and blasted through waves of incoming missiles, inching closer to their stricken comrades with each passing moment. Just as the Indomitable's shields failed, the rescue ships arrived. "This is Earth Task Force Zulu," a voice crackled over the comms. "We're here to get you out. Prepare for immediate evac." As shuttles docked with the crippled vessel, Reeves oversaw the evacuation of his crew. "Plant the charges," he ordered a team of engineers. "We're not letting them take this ship." With the last of the crew safely away, Reeves watched from a rescue shuttle as the Indomitable erupted in a massive fireball, taking its secrets with it to oblivion. At a hidden rendezvous point, Shaw and Reeves met to assess the situation. The mood was somber despite their partial victory. "We've dealt them a blow," Reeves said, "but Theros is still out there. His ships are still coming." Shaw nodded, his expression grim. "We need a new plan. Something bold. Something they won't expect." After hours of debate, a daring strategy emerged. "We'll infiltrate Theros' flagship," Reeves explained. "Cut off the head of the snake." Shaw handpicked a team of Earth's finest soldiers and engineers for the mission. As they prepared to embark, he addressed them one last time. "You carry the hopes of humanity with you," Shaw said. "Stop Theros, and we might just have a chance at survival." As Earth's remaining forces launched a diversionary attack, Reeves and his team set out on their perilous mission. They knew the odds were stacked against them, but failure simply wasn't an option. The fate of their world hung in the balance. The stealth shuttles cut through the void, their sleek hulls barely visible against the starry backdrop. Captain Marcus Reeves gripped the controls, his eyes fixed on the looming silhouette of the Zanari flagship. Twisted metal and shattered debris floated around them, remnants of the fierce battle that had raged mere hours ago. "Watch those chunks of wreckage," Reeves growled to his pilot. "One wrong move and we're space dust." The shuttle banked hard, narrowly avoiding a tumbling piece of alien hull plating. An unexploded missile drifted past, its guidance fins still twitching. Reeves held his breath until they were clear. As they approached the darkened Zanari vessel, Reeves addressed his team over the comms. "Remember your training. We hit hard, we hit fast. Failure is not an option." The shuttle's airlock hissed as it sealed against the Zanari ship's hull. Reeves nodded to his demolitions expert, who placed a shaped charge on the alien metal. "Fire in the hole!" A muffled thump, then a rush of escaping atmosphere. Reeves was first through the breach, his rifle sweeping the corridor beyond. "Move! Move! Move!" The strike team poured in behind him, fanning out to secure the area. Sparks showered from damaged conduits overhead, casting eerie shadows. The ship's emergency lighting bathed everything in a sickly purple glow. "Engineering team, peel off here," Reeves ordered. "Get that reactor online. We'll push for the bridge." As the engineers disappeared down a side passage, Reeves led his assault force deeper into the bowels of the alien vessel. They encountered their first resistance at a sealed bulkhead. Zanari security troops opened fire from entrenched positions, their energy weapons scorching the walls. "Suppressing fire!" Reeves shouted. His team let loose a withering barrage, their advanced human weaponry punching through Zanari armor with ease. Private Rodriguez lobbed a grenade over the barricade. The blast sent Zanari bodies flying, clearing the way forward. Reeves stepped over the smoking remains, his boots crunching on shattered alien carapaces. Meanwhile, the engineering team fought their way to the reactor room. Dr. Sarah Chen, Earth's foremost expert on Zanari technology, worked feverishly at an alien control panel. "Cover me!" she yelled as another wave of Zanari troops rounded the corner. The human soldiers formed a protective ring around her, their weapons blazing. Chen's fingers flew over the alien interface, her mind racing to decipher the complex systems. "Almost there. Got it!" The reactor hummed to life, power surging through the ship's systems. Lights flickered on throughout the vessel. Back with the assault team, Reeves and his soldiers battled their way onto the bridge. The last Zanari defenders fell under a hail of human gunfire. As the smoke cleared, Reeves found himself face to face with Theros himself. The Zanari leader stood defiantly, purple blood oozing from multiple wounds. His multifaceted eyes glared at Reeves with utter contempt. "You think this victory, human?" Theros spat. "Your species is nothing but vermin to be exterminated." Before Reeves could respond, Theros banged his hand onto a nearby console. Alarms blared throughout the ship as a computerized voice announced, "Self-destruct sequence initiated. Detonation in 5 minutes." Reeves cursed, activating his comm link. "Chen, we need that self-destruct aborted now!" "Working on it!" Chen's voice crackled back, the sound of gunfire in the background. "These systems are incredibly complex. We need more time." Reeves looked at his team, seeing the fear and willpower in their eyes. He made his decision. "All non-essential personnel, evacuate now. Chen, keep working. The rest of us will buy you the time you need." As part of the team raced for the escape shuttles, Reeves and his remaining soldiers dug in for a last stand. Wave after wave of Zanari troops assaulted their position, desperate to retake the bridge. Human weapons fire mixed with alien energy blasts, filling the air with deadly light. Reeves watched as his soldiers fell one by one, their sacrifices buying precious seconds for Chen and her team. 1 minute to detonation, the ship's computer announced dispassionately. Reeves gritted his teeth, firing his last clip into the oncoming Zanari. "Chen, tell me you've got something." "Almost there." Chen's voice was strained. "Just a few more seconds." The bridge doors buckled under Zanari fire. Reeves prepared for the end. Suddenly the alarms fell silent. Chen's triumphant voice filled the comm. "Self-destruct aborted. We have full control of ship systems." Reeves allowed himself a moment of relief before snapping back into action. "Target the Zanari fleet. Fire everything we've got." The captured flagship's weapons came to life, unleashing a devastating barrage against its former allies. Zanari ships exploded under the unexpected assault, their formation thrown into chaos. As Reeves and his surviving team members limped to the escape shuttles, he knew the tide had turned. Earth still faced a long and bloody fight, but for the first time since the invasion began, there was hope. The shuttles streaked away from the commandeered Zanari vessel, leaving destruction in their wake. Reeves allowed himself a small smile. They had struck a blow for Earth, and the real battle was just beginning. The captured Zanari flagship shuddered as Captain Marcus Reeves engaged its primary weapon systems. Massive energy beams lanced out, slicing through the enemy formation with devastating precision. On the bridge, Reeves stood at the helm, his eyes darting between holographic displays as he coordinated Earth's counterattack. "All ships, form up on our flanks," he ordered through the comm. "We'll punch a hole straight through their lines." Earth's surviving warships fell into formation around the commandeered vessel. Fighters swarmed ahead, drawing enemy fire and creating chaos in the Zanari ranks. The space around Earth lit up with weapons fire, debris, and explosions as the two fleets clashed. Reeves manipulated the alien controls, unleashing another salvo from the flagship's main guns. 3 Zanari cruisers buckled and shattered under the assault. He allowed himself a grim smile. "That's for Earth, you bastards!" On the Zanari side, Theros seethed with rage as he watched his carefully laid plans crumble. His new command ship rocked with impacts as human forces pressed their advantage. "Regroup!" he screamed at his subordinates. "We still outnumber them! Push them back!" But the Zanari attack faltered. Without their flagship and its advanced coordination systems, their formations became disjointed and uncoordinated. Human ships exploited gaps in their defenses, striking hard and fast before retreating. On Earth's surface, resistance fighters emerged from hiding to strike at the occupying Zanari forces. In the ruins of New York, a squad of human soldiers crouched behind a burned-out hovercar, watching as an alien patrol marched down the debris-strewn street. "Now!" their leader whispered. Improvised explosives detonated, scattering the Zanari troops. The humans opened fire, their weapons cutting down the disoriented aliens. Similar scenes played out in cities across the globe as Earth's people fought to reclaim their world. Back in orbit, Reeves saw the Zanari lines beginning to buckle. He opened a channel to Secretary General Shaw. "Sir, they're on the run. Permission to pursue?" Shaw's voice crackled back, tense but determined. "Granted, Captain, don't let them escape. We can't give them a chance to regroup." Reeves nodded, then addressed his crew. "All ahead full. Target their engines and FTL drives. We're not letting these bastards get away." The commandeered flagship surged forward, its alien engines propelling it past the fleeing Zanari ships. Reeves employed hit-and-run tactics, striking hard at vulnerable targets before using the ship's superior speed to evade return fire. A Zanari battlecruiser loomed ahead, Theros' new command vessel. Reeves tightened his grip on the controls. "All power to forward weapons. Let's end this." The flagship's main guns fired, their energy beams punching through the battlecruiser's shields and tearing into its hull. Secondary explosions rippled along its length as system after system failed. On the crippled Zanari ship's bridge, Theros stumbled as the deck heaved beneath him. Sparks showered from shattered consoles, and the acrid smell of burning electronics filled the air. He stared in disbelief at the tactical display showing his once mighty armada in full retreat. "This isn't possible," he muttered. "We are the Zanari. We do not lose to primitives." But lose they had. As Earth's forces methodically hunted down and destroyed the remaining Zanari ships, the full extent of their defeat became clear. The invasion force that had seemed unstoppable mere days ago was now reduced to scattered, fleeing remnants. In Earth's orbit, Reeves watched as the last Zanari vessels limped away, escaping into the depths of space. He sagged in his chair, the adrenaline of battle finally fading. A cheer went up from his crew, but Reeves knew this was only the beginning. Secretary General Shaw's face appeared on the main view screen, his expression a mix of relief and iron will. "Well done, Captain. But our work is just the beginning. Report back to Earth immediately. We have a planet to rebuild and a war to prepare for." Reeves nodded, understanding the weight of the task ahead. As he guided the captured flagship back towards Earth, he couldn't help but wonder what challenges the future would bring. The Zanari Empire had been bloodied, but not defeated, and humanity's defiance would not go unanswered. Secretary General Charles Shaw stood before the holographic war table, his eyes scanning the ever-shifting battle lines across the galaxy. The room hummed with activity as analysts and strategists worked tirelessly to process incoming intelligence reports. "We need to strike now, while the iron's hot," Shaw declared, his voice cutting through the background chatter. "Earth's victory has given us a window of opportunity we can't afford to waste." He turned to his chief of staff. "Dispatch diplomatic envoys to every known world under Zanari control. We need allies, and we need them fast." Days later, on the scarred surface of Thraxis Prime, Elena Torres stepped out of her shuttle onto cracked pavement. The acrid smell of burning fuel filled her nostrils as she surveyed the war-torn landscape. Twisted metal and shattered concrete stretched as far as the eye could see. A group of hulking figures emerged from the ruins, their skin a mottled gray-green and covered in bony protrusions. Torres recognized them as Thraxians from her briefings. She held her ground as they approached, their eyes narrowed with suspicion. "I come seeking an audience with Warlord Krax," Torres announced, her voice steady despite her racing heart. The lead Thraxian, a massive warrior with a network of scars crisscrossing his face, grunted. "And why should we trust you, human?" Torres reached into her satchel, pulling out a data crystal. "Because we've done what you thought impossible. We've beaten the Zanari." She activated the crystal, projecting images of Earth's victorious battle into the air. The Thraxians watched in stunned silence as human ships tore through the Zanari fleet. Hours later, Torres stood before Warlord Krax in a makeshift war room. The Thraxian leader's cybernetic eye whirred as it focused on her. "Your victory is impressive," Krax rumbled, "but how do we know this isn't some elaborate Zanari trick?" Torres met his gaze unflinchingly. "Because the Zanari would never admit defeat, even in deception. We're offering you a real chance at freedom, Warlord. The question is, are you willing to take it?" Krax was silent for a long moment. Then a fierce grin spread across his face. "We Thraxians have never backed down from a fight. Tell your leaders we're in." As word of Earth's alliance with the Thraxians spread, other subjugated worlds began to stir. On the factory planet of Zex-9, enslaved workers sabotaged production lines and overran their Zanari overseers. The lush jungle world of Verdana erupted in guerrilla warfare, with native resistance fighters emerging from hidden bases to strike at Imperial outposts. Aboard the captured Zanari flagship, now christened the Defiance, Captain Reeves studied the tactical displays showing the Krios system. Beside him stood Grok, a Thraxian battle commander, his massive frame dwarfing the human officer. "Their orbital defenses are formidable," Grok growled, pointing at the network of Zanari battle stations. Reeves nodded. "That's why we'll hit them from multiple vectors simultaneously. Your warriors will lead the ground assault while we provide orbital support and disrupt their communications." The battle for Krios unfolded with brutal intensity. Thraxian drop pods screamed through the atmosphere, disgorging waves of fierce warriors into the heart of Zanari-controlled cities. The streets ran with purple Zanari blood as Grok's forces tore through the Imperial garrison. From orbit, the Defiance's guns rained destruction on key military targets. Reeves watched as pinpoint strikes reduced Zanari strongholds to rubble, clearing the way for the advancing rebel forces. "All ships, press the attack," Reeves ordered over the comm. "We've got them on the ropes." As the Zanari defenses crumbled, the Kriosian population rose up en masse, overwhelming their oppressors with sheer numbers. Within days, the planet was free. News of Krios's liberation spread like wildfire across the galaxy. On a dozen worlds, downtrodden species cast off their chains and turned on their Zanari masters. Shaw's coalition grew by the day, uniting former enemies against their common foe. But the Zanari Empire was far from defeated. In his vast flagship, Theros seethed with rage as reports of rebellion flooded in. His multifaceted eyes gleamed with malice as he turned to his assembled war council. "These vermin think they can challenge us?" Theros hissed. "We will show them the true meaning of imperial might. Prepare the planet killers. It's time to make an example." Zanari warfleets descended on rebel-held worlds, unleashing devastating bombardments that shattered continents and boiled away oceans. Billions perished as entire ecosystems were reduced to ash and cinders. On Earth, Shaw watched the casualty reports with growing horror. "We need a game changer," he muttered, "something to turn the tide decisively in our favor." That edge came in the form of the Vrylax, an elusive species long thought to be mere legend. Shaw's diplomats worked tirelessly to convince the reclusive race to join the fight, appealing to their ancient grudge against the Zanari. In a secret meeting, deep within the cloaked Verlax homeworld, Shaw stood before the ethereal Verlax conclave. Their translucent bodies shimmered with bioluminescence as they regarded the human leader. "For millennia we have hidden from the Zanari scourge," the lead Verlax intoned, its voice a melodic whisper. "But perhaps it is time we emerged from the shadows. We will share our stealth technology with your rebellion, in hopes that together we can end the Empire's tyranny." Armed with Verlax cloaking devices, rebel strike teams slipped past Zanari defenses to wreak havoc on supply lines and military installations. Zanari commanders grew paranoid, jumping at shadows as their forces were picked apart by an unseen enemy. As the rebellion gathered momentum, Shaw knew they needed to press their advantage. In a secure war room deep beneath the rebuilt ruins of Geneva, he addressed his top military and political advisors. "We've bloodied the Zanari nose," Shaw declared, his eyes blazing with intensity. "But now it's time to go for the throat. We're taking the fight to their homeworld." Homeworld of Xeris Prime. The assembled leaders of the rebellion leaned forward, their eyes fixed on the holographic display of the Zanari capital world. Shaw's voice rang out, clear and commanding. "Operation Firestorm begins now. We hit them with everything we've got." Across the galaxy, rebel ships jumped to light speed, converging on Xeris Prime. Human destroyers flew alongside massive Thraxian dreadnoughts. Sleek Verlax stealth vessels slipped between the larger warships, their hulls shimmering with advanced cloaking technology. On the bridge of the Defiance, Captain Reeves watched as the swirling vortex of hyperspace gave way to the looming presence of Xeris Prime. The planet's orbital defenses bristled with weaponry, a dense network of battle stations and minefields surrounding the Zanari homeworld. "All ships, battle formations," Reeves ordered. "Fighters, launch on my mark." The rebel fleet surged forward. Energy beams lanced out, striking Zanari defensive platforms. Swarms of fighters erupted from carrier bays, streaking towards the planet's atmosphere. Aboard his flagship, Theros snarled orders to his commanders. "Crush these vermin! Show them the might of the Zanari Empire!" The space above Xeris Prime erupted in chaos. Capital ships traded thunderous broadsides, their shields flaring under the onslaught. Fighters and bombers dueled in intricate ballets of death, explosions blooming silently in the void. As the main fleet engaged the Zanari defenses, Reeves led his strike team towards the planet's surface. The Defiance's hull vibrated as it plunged through the atmosphere, cloaked by Verlax technology. "We're passing through the outer security grid," Reeves's pilot announced. "No sign of detection." The Defiance touched down in a secluded landing zone near the sprawling Imperial Palace. Reeves and his team disembarked, their stealth suits blending seamlessly with the shadows. "Move out," Reeves whispered. "Remember, our primary target is the Emperor and his inner circle." The strike team infiltrated the palace grounds, using stolen access codes to bypass security checkpoints. They moved swiftly through ornate corridors, disabling surveillance systems and neutralizing patrols with silent efficiency. As they approached the Emperor's inner sanctum, a squad of Zanari elite guards rounded the corner. For a heartbeat, both groups froze in surprise. Then the air filled with weapons fire. Reeves dove behind a pillar, plasma bolts sizzling past his head. He returned fire, his weapon set to maximum lethality. A Zanari guard crumpled, purple blood spattering the polished floor. "Push forward," Reeves shouted. "We can't let them sound the alarm." The humans and their alien allies surged ahead, overwhelming the guards with sheer ferocity. But more Zanari poured in from adjoining corridors, their chitinous armor gleaming in the harsh light. In orbit, Shaw's command vessel rocked under a barrage from Theros' flagship. The Zanari warship's guns blazed, punching through the rebel ship's shields. "Evasive maneuvers," Shaw ordered. "Concentrate all fire on their main cannon." The two vessels circled each other like massive predators, their weapons tearing chunks from armor and superstructure. Smaller ships darted between them, adding their fire to the titanic duel. Back in the Imperial Palace, Reeves and his team fought their way to the Emperor's chambers. They burst through the ornate doors, weapons at the ready, only to find the room empty. "Damn it," Reeves snarled. "He's already evacuated. New objective. We take out the military leadership. Move!" They raced towards the war room, alarms blaring throughout the palace. As they approached the heavily fortified entrance, a hail of fire forced them into cover. "This is it!" Reeves shouted over the din of battle. "The Empire's top brass is behind those doors. We take them out. We cut the head off the snake." The rebels pushed forward, trading fire with the entrenched Zanari defenders. The air filled with the acrid smell of ozone and burning flesh as both sides fought with desperate intensity. In space, on the ground, and deep within the Imperial Palace, the battle raged on. The fate of galaxies hung in the balance as Operation Firestorm reached its climax. The war room erupted in chaos as Reeves and his team breached the heavily fortified entrance. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air, leaving scorch marks on ornate walls adorned with Zanari battle trophies. The acrid smell of ozone and burning flesh filled Reeves's nostrils as he dove behind an overturned command console. "Suppress that heavy gunner!" Reeves shouted, gesturing to a Zanari officer manning a mounted weapon. Private Chen lobbed a plasma grenade, the explosion sending shrapnel and purple gore flying. Reeves vaulted over his cover, charging forward with his rifle blazing. Zanari officers fell left and right, their chitinous armor no match for the concentrated fire. As the smoke cleared, a towering figure emerged. Grand Admiral Thrax, his cybernetic eye glowing malevolently, brandished a crackling energy blade. "You dare invade the heart of the Empire?" Thrax roared, his mandibles clicking in fury. Reeves discarded his empty rifle and drew his combat knife. "Your reign of terror ends today, Thrax." The two warriors clashed in a flurry of strikes. Thrax's blade hummed as it sliced through the air, barely missing Reeves's head. The human captain ducked and weaved, looking for an opening in the Zanari's defenses. Reeves felt the heat of the energy blade as it grazed his arm, searing flesh. He gritted his teeth against the pain and lunged forward, driving his knee into Thrax's midsection. The Zanari admiral staggered back, momentarily winded. Seizing the opportunity, Reeves closed the distance. His knife found a gap in Thrax's armor, plunging deep into the alien's neck. Purple blood spurted as Thrax gurgled and collapsed. "War room secured," Reeves called out, wiping alien blood from his face. "Get those comms online now." His team sprang into action, accessing the palace's strategic communications array. Lieutenant Park's fingers flew over alien controls, hijacking the Zanari command frequencies. "This is Lieutenant Park of the Earth Alliance," she broadcast. "Grand Admiral Thrax is dead. All Zanari forces, stand down immediately." Confusion spread through the Imperial ranks as contradictory orders flooded the comms. Reeves watched the tactical displays, seeing Zanari formations break apart and retreat in disarray. In orbit, the space battle raged on. Shaw's flagship, the Defiance, traded devastating broadsides with Theros's warship. The bridge shuddered under the impact of Zanari weapons fire. "Shields at 30%, the tactical officer shouted. "We can't take much more of this." Shaw gripped the command chair, his eyes fixed on the enemy vessel. "Concentrate all fire on their port weapons array." The Defiance's main guns roared to life, lancing out with searing beams of energy. Theros's ship shuddered under the assault, its hull breached in multiple locations. "Their primary weapons are offline," the tactical officer reported triumphantly. Shaw allowed himself a grim smile. "Now's our chance. All batteries, fire at will." The rebel fleet poured fire into the crippled Zanari flagship. Explosions bloomed silently across its hull. But even as victory seemed within reach, alarms blared throughout the Defiance. "Sir, we've been boarded," the security chief reported. "Zanari troops are swarming the lower decks." Shaw cursed under his breath. "All hands repel boarders. We didn't come this far to lose now." The corridors of the Defiance became a battleground as human crew members clashed with Zanari boarding parties, the air filled with weapons fire and the screams of the wounded. Shaw led a group of defenders, his pistol barking as he gunned down alien invaders. But the Zanari pressed forward, their superior numbers threatening to overwhelm the human defenders. Just as the situation seemed dire, Reeves's voice crackled over the comms. "Shaw, this is Reeves. We've secured the palace and are coming to extract you. Hold on." Reeves and his team raced through the opulent halls of the Imperial Palace, commandeering a Zanari dropship. They blasted off from the surface, streaking towards the embattled Defiance. The dropship's hull glowed red-hot as it punched through the atmosphere. Reeves gripped the controls, weaving through the debris-strewn battlefield. "There!" he shouted, spotting the Defiance. "Prepare for hard dock!" The Zanari dropship slammed into the Defiance's hull, magnetic clamps engaging. Reeves and his team burst through the airlock, catching the Zanari boarders in a devastating crossfire. Shaw's eyes widened as he saw Reeves charging down the corridor, cutting down aliens left and right. "Impeccable timing, Captain." "Thought you could use a hand," Reeves grinned, blasting a Zanari warrior point blank. "But we're not out of this yet." As they fought to secure the ship, Shaw's mind raced. They needed a way to turn the tide decisively. His eyes fell on a tactical display showing the palace's long-range teleportation array. "Reeves," he said, a daring plan forming. "How'd you like to pay Emperor Theros a personal visit?" Reeves's eyes gleamed with understanding. "You're not suggesting—" Shaw nodded. "It's time we end this, once and for all." They fought their way to the Defiance's teleportation chamber, inputting the coordinates for Theros' flagship. Energy crackled around them as the teleporter activated. In a flash of blinding light, Shaw, Reeves, and a squad of elite troops materialized in the heart of the enemy vessel. Stunned Zanari crew members barely had time to react before the humans opened fire. Alarms blared as Shaw and Reeves carved a path of destruction through the ship. They burst onto the bridge, weapons blazing, catching Theros and his commanders completely off guard. The Zanari Emperor snarled in rage, drawing an ornate energy sword. "You dare!" Shaw stepped forward, his own weapon at the ready. "It's over, Theros. Surrender, and we'll spare what's left of your people." Theros' multifaceted eyes blazed with hatred. "I'll see you in hell first, human." The two leaders clashed in a furious duel, their weapons sparking as they connected. Shaw ducked under a vicious swipe, feeling the heat of the energy blade pass inches from his face. He retaliated with a flurry of strikes, driving Theros back. The Zanari Emperor's superior strength was matched by Shaw's speed and precision. In a lightning-fast move, Shaw feinted left and then struck right, his weapon finding a gap in Theros' armor. The Zanari Emperor let out an inhuman shriek as he fell. Shaw stood over his fallen enemy, breathing heavily. "The Zanari Empire is finished, Theros. It's time for a new era of peace." With their leader defeated, the remaining Zanari crew surrendered. Shaw took control of the flagship's weapons systems, turning them against the remnants of the Imperial fleet. Across the battlefield, Zanari ships began to power down or flee as news of their emperor's defeat spread. The rebel fleet consolidated its gains, mopping up pockets of resistance. From the captured flagship's bridge, Shaw watched as Xeris Prime fell under rebel control. The once mighty Zanari Empire crumbled before his eyes. But even as victory washed over him, Shaw knew the real work was just beginning. Building a lasting peace from the ashes of war would be a monumental task. He turned to Reeves, his expression somber. "We've won the war, Captain. Now comes the hard part, winning the peace." Peace. Shaw's words hung in the air as he gazed out at the smoldering ruins of Xeris Prime. The once opulent Imperial Palace now stood as a hulking, battle-scarred monument to their hard-fought victory. But as the dust settled, Shaw knew the real struggle was just beginning. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy. On a dozen worlds, Zanari loyalists dug in their heels, refusing to lay down arms. Shaw's comm unit buzzed incessantly with urgent messages from rebel commanders, pleading for reinforcements. "Sir, we've got a situation on Kriya, Lieutenant Park reported, her face grim. "Captain Reeves's garrison is under heavy attack. They're requesting immediate assistance." Shaw's eyes sharp. He'd known Reeves for years, fought alongside him in countless battles. But now, He had to weigh the life of his friend against the bigger picture. "We can't spare the ships," Shaw said, his voice heavy. "Tell Reeves to hold the line. We'll get to him as soon as we can." As Shaw issued orders, redirecting forces to quell uprisings on key worlds, tension filled the makeshift war room. Representatives from various rebel factions jockeyed for position, each demanding a greater say in the new galactic order. "The Centauri Confederacy demands control of the Rigel sector," Ambassador Zoe declared, pounding his fist on the table. "It's our birthright." "Birthright?" General Voss of the Terran Alliance scoffed. "Your people were still flinging rocks at each other when we colonized those worlds." Shaw rubbed his temples, feeling a headache coming on. He'd toppled an empire, only to find himself playing peacekeeper to squabbling children. On Kree V, Captain Reeves crouched behind a crumbling barricade, plasma bolts sizzling overhead. The sky burned orange with the fires of orbital bombardment as Zanari warships pounded rebel positions. "Hold the line!" Reeves shouted, his voice hoarse from days of constant battle. "We can't let these bastards take the planet." A nearby explosion showered Reeves with debris. He wiped grime from his eyes, surveying the battered remnants of his garrison. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and running dangerously low on supplies. Reeves knew they couldn't hold out much longer, but as he watched his troops fight on with fierce dedication, an idea began to form. A desperate, possibly suicidal idea. "Sergeant Mason," Reeves called out. "I need our best infiltrators. We're going to hit them where it hurts." Back on Xeris Prime, Shaw found himself facing a new crisis. The enigmatic Vrilax, alien allies who had proved crucial in toppling the Zanari Empire, were making increasingly aggressive territorial demands. Shaw stood before the imposing Vrilax ambassador, Cathex, in a private meeting chamber. The alien's iridescent scales shimmered in the dim light, its multifaceted eyes unreadable. "The Vrilax have bled for this victory," Cathex hissed. "We demand our fair share of the spoils." Shaw felt a chill run down his spine. He'd seen the Vrilax in action, knew the devastation they could unleash, but he couldn't let the galaxy slip into chaos. "We're grateful for your help," Shaw said carefully, "but we can't allow unchecked expansion. It would destabilize—" Cathex cut him off with a sharp gesture. "You forget your place, human. We are not some minor race to be placated with empty words." As the Vrilax stormed out, Shaw knew he had to act fast. The fragile alliance that had won them the war was unraveling before his eyes. In a secure bunker deep beneath the palace, Shaw met with his most trusted advisors. The air was thick with tension as he laid out his plan. "A covert strike on the Vrilax stronghold," Shaw explained, pointing to a holographic display. "We need to show them we're not pushovers, without triggering all-out war." General Voss shook his head. "It's too risky. If it goes wrong—" "I know the risks," Shaw snapped, "but if we do nothing, we lose everything we fought for." As Shaw gave the go-ahead for the operation, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was lighting a fuse that could ignite the entire galaxy. The covert strike team moved through the shadows of the Vrilax stronghold, their stealth suits rendering them nearly invisible. But as they approached their target, alarms blared. "We've been made!" the team leader shouted. "Fall back!" Weapons fire erupted from all directions. The human operatives fought desperately, but they were hopelessly outmatched. Within minutes, the operation had devolved into a bloodbath. News of the failed strike spread like wildfire. The Vrilax, enraged by what they saw as a betrayal, launched a devastating counterattack. Across the galaxy, other factions seized the opportunity to settle old scores and grab territory. Shaw watched in horror as the alliance he'd worked so hard to build crumbled before his eyes. The dream of a unified, peaceful galaxy shattered, replaced by a nightmarish free-for-all. As reports of new conflicts flooded in, Shaw realized he was no longer fighting to build a better future. He was fighting simply to prevent total collapse. The once celebrated hero now found himself reviled by former allies and enemies alike. Each decision, each compromise, seemed to only make things worse. In the skies above Forge World, Shaw's battered fleet faced off against a massive coalition of Zanari remnants and renegade rebel factions. The shipyards, vital to maintaining control of the sector, hung in the balance. Shaw stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching as enemy ships tore through his defenses. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and rapidly running out of options. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, voice trembling, "they've broken through our last line. We can't hold them off any longer." Shaw closed his eyes, the weight of what he was about to do crushing down on him. When he opened them again, his gaze was cold and hard. "Activate the Omega Protocol," he ordered. "Authorization code, Shaw Alpha 793. A hush fell over the bridge as the weapons officer inputted the code. A moment later, a blinding flash lit up the view screen. The experimental weapon tore through space-time itself, obliterating the enemy fleet and the shipyards in an instant. But as the light faded, Shaw realized the true horror of what he'd done. Entire populated sectors had been caught in the blast radius, millions of civilians vaporized in the blink of an eye. As reports of the devastation poured in, Shaw felt something break inside him. He'd become the very thing he'd fought so hard to destroy. In the days that followed, Shaw found himself unable to sleep, unable to eat. The faces of those he'd sacrificed haunted his every waking moment. Finally, standing before a gathered crowd of rebel leaders and press, Shaw made his decision. "I hereby resign my position," he announced, his voice hollow. "I can no longer be the leader this galaxy needs." As Shaw walked away from the podium, ignoring the shouts and questions from the assembled crowd, he felt a strange sense of relief mixed with overwhelming guilt. He'd won the war, toppled an empire, but in the end, he'd failed to build the peace he'd dreamed of. As he boarded a small, unmarked shuttle, Shaw took one last look at the world he was leaving behind. The galaxy burned. Faction fought faction. Old grudges flared into open warfare, and the dream of unity lay shattered among the stars. In overthrowing one tyrant, they had given birth to 1,000 more. Shaw closed his eyes as the shuttle lifted off. He'd fought for freedom, for justice, for a better future. But in the harsh light of reality, those noble ideals had crumbled to dust. As the shuttle disappeared into the vastness of space, the galaxy Shaw left behind descended further into chaos. The hard-won victory over the Zanari Empire had proved hollow, a brief moment of triumph before plunging into an age of endless war and suffering. The fires of conflict raged on, consuming worlds and shattering lives, and in the echoes of battle, the bitter lesson remained. The path to lasting peace was far longer and far bloodier than anyone had dared to imagine.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.